The following video contains depictions of anxiety, depression, and suicide. It also contains spoilers. Seriously, I'd spoil the entire game, so yeah. Omori's an RPG Maker game with a completely original story that has inspiration from the late 2000 to early 2010 RPG Maker games of the same nature. It begins with us viewing the perspective of one of our main playable characters, Omori. Omori's a mute, emotionless husk that has the distinct depiction of having no color. We appear to be chilling in a white room known as white space. There are only a few interactions to be had here that we can try to explore to get to know who we are and why we are here. There are also some creepy red hands here that will transport us back to our little box if we touch them. Take note of that. After reading through our journal that tells us everything is apparently okay, a knife will drop from the ceiling. Pick it up and head out the door. We are then brought to a place that can only be described as a child safe space. You know, that mindset that your parents used to tell you to go when you were feeling frustrated as a kid. Here we meet our best friends, Kel, our hot-headed and forthcoming friend who does not think before he does, Aubrey, our emotionally sensitive friend and potential love interest, and Hiro, our eldest and responsible friend who always tries his best but only very rarely is the best. After retrieving Aubrey's stuffed toy resembling an eggplant, Hiro tells us that two of our other friends, Mari and Basil, have set up a picnic for us all at the playground. So, after we are handed our allowance, save Aubrey from a tree, and find a spooky thing, we travel to the playground. It is here we meet a green-haired kid with a cool flower crown. Turns out he and the girl he is standing by is Basil and Mari. Mari's Omori's loving older sister and off-the-cuff girlfriend to Hiro. Basil's a gentle guy who has an affinity for photography and plants. He keeps a photo album of his friends to capture his memories with them. This photo album plays a bit of an important role throughout the story, so keep this in mind. After flipping through the photo album and enjoying the picnic, Basil suggests the friends should go to his house to have some fun. Mari opts to stay behind, to Basil's disappointment. Someone has to take care of the picnic, right? Before we can leave the playground, one of the many odd creatures forces the friends to play hide and seek. Everyone draws straws, and of course, we're stuck with finding everyone. One quick round of hide and seek and a roll call later, we discover that Basil is missing. That problem is soon rectified with a new one, as one of the banished kids, Boss, has taken Basil hostage. Here we have our first boss of the game, and are introduced to something most other good RPG Maker horror games rarely ever see, an RPG battle system. During this boss fight, we learn that Omori can prevent his heart from dropping to 0, but only if his heart is higher than 1. Neat. Upon defeating Boss, Basil gives him a stern warning, and we head off to Flower Crown's house. Here, the game gives us more generic tutorial battles and introduces us to the characteristics of each of our friends by comparing everyone to flowers. After defeating all the tutorial enemies, known as sprout moles, we come across a giant sprout mole that is blocking our way to Basil's house. In order to defeat him, our friends channel their friendship and pull out an ultimate attack to blow this guy away. Throughout these battles, we also learn that Omori uses the knife we found in Whitespace as a weapon. We also see Mari again, who has somehow teleported ahead of us to set up another picnic. Now we finally make it to Basil's house that is made up of a giant old shoe. Basil, wanting to take a picture, has everyone pose for a moment. Aubrey and Kel fight over looking at the newly taken photo and end up tripping Basil over and causing the photos in his photo album to fly everywhere. The friends collect all of them and head inside to reorganize the photo album. Basil finds out that there happens to be an extra photo that he does not remember taking. Basil then goes all demonic on us, and we get a quick flash of what that photo was, a broken violin at the bottom of a staircase. Omori finds himself alone back in Whitespace, where, upon opening the menu, we get a new red option to stab. Having nothing else to do, we take it, and Omori proceeds to stab himself to death. Seriously. The screen goes black, and we are introduced to the main character of the game, Sunny, who I named Kizzy because, yes, it can be reasonably assumed that what we have played so far was a dream that Sunny had, because he wakes up in the middle of the night right after what happened to Omori. Sunny also has a serious case of tummy rumbles, so we attempt to find him some food. However, upon trying to go down the staircase, we find out about Sunny's fear of heights. Back to bed it is. However, we do not stay long, as hunger will always beat out fear. This time, something is off though, as the house has turned eerie with a red shining glow through the window to the staircase. Learning that we can no longer see the bottom of the staircase, we begin walking down it and are met with some dark hands. Sunny picks up the knife on the stairs, seems kinda dangerous to just have it lying there like that, and he is chased by a giant hand. The hand reaches us, and we begin to fight what has now become named Something. We hear a voice telling us to calm down, and the fight ends with Sunny at the bottom of the stairs. Well, that was certainly weird, but I suppose that's what it's like to have irrational fears. We then cook up a cold steak in the dark house and come down with a different case of tummy rumbles. After hugging a toilet, we are met with someone knocking at the door. It's Mari, although opening the door gives us something that is definitely not Mari. Returning to bed, we pick up with Omori where the door has reformed in white space. Looking at our laptop does not bring up our journal. Instead, it shows us a hangman game and clues to where we can find the letters to said game. Exiting the laptop, a map of headspace falls that all but confirms that Omori's world is made up of Sunny's imagination, where Omori is a stand-in for Sunny. We still have a little bit to do before the game finally starts opening up a bit and letting us explore, and one of these things is meeting up back with Mari as Hiro tells us she is worried about us. Meandering back over to the playground, we meet with Mari, who gives us a hug, and we learn that Basil is missing. There are also red footsteps in the world now that I'm assuming are there to tell us that Basil has walked there at some point? I'm honestly not too sure, but hey, they sometimes lead to letters for the Hangman game, so that's something. After following the footsteps, Mari will teach us how to get over our fear of heights. This is likely the game trying to tell us that it was Mari who told Sunny to calm down when fighting the hand Something. You didn't hear that from me though. After some more exploring and side questing, we climb up the mandatory, comically and annoyingly large ladder that we couldn't before to reach our next destination, Otherworld. Upon reaching the new planet, Kel marks the territory by using Aubrey's butt certificate gained from a previous side quest, and no, I will not give any context as to why that is a thing. Upon entering the campsite in the Otherworld, we see Mari. Seriously, how does she keep teleporting like that? We can also explore the rest of the planet, but eventually we make it to the top of the campsite where we learn that a certain space pirate has gone under the weather. One of the space pirates tells that the Captain Spaceboy, has had something happen to his girlfriend's sweetheart. He will also mention that the captain used to listen to a special mixtape she made for him to cheer himself up in the past, and that he threw it away for some reason. He then tasks us with going to the junkyard to retrieve it. On our way to the junkyard, we overhear some pirates talking about how they lost their captain's favorite planet, Pluto. Oh well, not our problem. Enter the junkyard. Some puzzles, fighting, and learning about the new tag function later, we come across an odd and civil sprout mole named Rosa. We also figure out she has Spaceboy's old mixtape too, and she will promptly run away from us. Eventually we catch up with her because she runs into an area that causes her to freeze due to a 404 error. Seriously, she runs across a line that causes her to crash so she stops moving. Anyway, we promptly do the same, but this time we must fight the 404 error in a boss fight. Very clever use of the programming there to explain something in the story. Upon winning, Rosa still needs to boot back up, so we steal the mixtape from her before she can stop us. She then, understandably, runs away. Upon leaving the junkyard, we run into Pluto, or rather, he runs into us, and find out that he's running away from the space pirates. We help him hide from them, and then he rewards us with a fast travel system that will help us return to areas we have visited previously. Sweet. Now on to Spaceboy. When we return, our friends begin to wonder why Spaceboy threw away the mixtape to begin with, and one of the pirates tells us that he broke up with Sweetheart, and that's why he has been sad. Kel, not listening, starts to play the mixtape, not realizing that it'll cause Spaceboy to relive painful memories. Insert inevitable boss fight. Upon his defeat, Spaceboy will calm down and start to realize that it's time for him to move on and return to being a space pirate captain. Our friends ask him about Basil, but Spaceboy doesn't have anything that can help the group. He will, however, give us a train pass and a snow cone ticket. Nice. Out of ideas, we begin our descent back to the playground, but we see some footsteps leading to a barn in a field of cattails on the other world. When we enter Cattail Fields, we find Omori all alone, and we can see what looks like a dark figure of Basil leading him on. He will lead us to the barn, where upon entering, will show us a giant mirror that Dark Basil then walks into. Omori follows and is transported to a dark hallway with a family portrait of Sunny and Mari's family at the end. There's also a stand of sheet music that, when interacting with it, will cause the shadow figure we have been seeing from time to time throughout the game chase us back down the dark hallway. Once Omori is inevitably caught, we will be brought back to White Space, where we have to go through round 2 of the stab option. We wake up once again as Sunny. This time it is daytime, and we are also welcomed with another knock at the door. Answering the door will reveal Kel, and that he noticed that Sunny is moving away in 3 days. He wants to hang out with Sunny before he leaves for good old time's sake. Who are we to say no to him? So we open the door. Unlike last time with Mari, we see the real Kel this time, standing at the door. But he appears much older than the depiction of him in Headspace. Curiosity about the meaning of old time's sake and why he seems older than in the dreams aside, Kel suggests we hunt for a present for Hero since he's returning home from college tomorrow. Here, we can note that a strange lack of Mari's presence, but since Hero's in college, and he is the same age as Mari, maybe she's away too. After a bit of exploring and going to hobbies, where the duo pick out a gift for Hero, we're allowed to explore and do the odd jobs that are listed around the town. While we explore, we also see figments of creatures from the dreams that Sunny's been having in the real world that promptly disappear when interacting with them. Maybe it has something to do with the time difference between the dream world and Sunny's world. Anyway, after swatting some flies, sorting some tools, helping with homework, and watching a guy fix a leak in his house, we can make our way to the playground where we see Basil and Aubrey. Things don't look good though, as Aubrey, now sporting some swanky pink hair, is picking on Basil with her new friends ganging up on him. Kel and Sunny jump in to help, where we are prompted with a fight against Aubrey. Upon Sunny swinging the steak knife he still has from his fight against the hand something, the fight ends, and Aubrey notes how Kel is hanging around a psychopath. That's kinda rude. I seem to remember you having a nail bat in our fight, Aubrey. How is that any different? Anyway, the gang splits off, and we talk to Basil, who seems to be a lot meeker and more closed off than his depiction from Headspace. Nonetheless, we escort Basil home, where we find out he has another problem. Basil explains that he was fighting with Aubrey because she stole his photo album of all his memories with his friends. Kel, being the good guy he is, promises to get the photo album back for Basil and that they will always be friends, which oddly surprises Basil. We then begin the hunt for Aubrey by fighting with and talking to each of her friends until one of them tells us where she went. Eventually, we fight her new best friend who tells us she's in the church of all places. Maybe she's atoning for treating her old friends like trash, who knows, so off to church we go. Kel, being a little hesitant, ends up following Sunny into the church, where we learn a very important distinction between Headspace and the real world. Aubrey, in a rage at Kel, trying to tell her that they are old friends, mentioned that Mari is dead and that she was forced to take care of herself since all of her friends left her alone when Mari died. This, being a tough subject for everyone, prompts yet another fight between Aubrey and her ex-friends. After her inevitable defeat, she runs home and the duo follow her. We then catch a glimpse of Aubrey throwing out the photo album. Kel digs it out of the trash can and notes that half the photos are missing. Oh well, it sucks, but you get what you can get. Onward to Basil. Upon returning to Basil's home, his caretaker invites the two boys in for some dinner. Basil and his friends look through the photo album, taking note of the missing pictures. We can also see that a few of the pictures are different from how Sunny remembers them in Headspace. During dinner, Kel mentions how Sunny is moving, and Basil is shocked as he didn't know. He leaves to the bathroom, and Sunny follows him in to find the same darkness around him that we saw before he first disappeared in Headspace. He manically questions that Sunny won't move away, right? That it has to be something forcing him, something behind him. We then leave, and Basil cries, asking Sunny not to leave him again. Being late, we then head back home and part ways with Kel, who asks us to hang out again tomorrow. Entering the house, we could see that it's turned back to the eerie presence it had when Sunny was attacked by the hand something, only this time the house is overrun by spiders. The staircase once again has become never-ending, and Sunny is attacked by a giant spider that is also named Something in the fight to follow. Here, a voice once again gives us advice, and Sunny is able to defeat the spider something, noticing that there was only one small spider at the top of the stairs causing the whole issue. Back to sleep and back to Headspace, nothing fancy this time. Without questioning why Sunny is always having the same dream, we join up with our friends again, and then we go back to Mari, who, once again, was worried about us. The friends then mention how Basil's still missing, and that they still haven't looked in the forest that's east of the tree stump. Mari helps Omori get over his fear of bugs, and we learn that Hero is also afraid of bugs. Looks like this will be a therapy session for the both of them. Before we go to the forest, however, we run into some Sprout Moles who, upon fighting and looting, kindly give us tickets to play in Sprout Mole Village. Onwards to Firefly Forest, where we learn to cut webs and light candles. Not much happens in this forest, generic bullshit like puzzles, side quests, and a talking mushroom that wants someone to eat him. Something of note in the forest is a strange character lurking deep within that I totally didn't miss in my playthrough of the game. This character is interesting because he is the first to outright tell us clues that can confirm some of the grand story that's going on. I won't talk much about that grand story until we have all the pieces, but oh look, we get to smash a minecart into a wall. Fun. One creepy boss fight later, we enter Sprout Mole Village. Again, not a whole lot going on, just a lot of sprout moles and a giant plant monster thing. We can, however, go to the play since we were generously given front row seat tickets. We can see that the play is actually a game show where 3 contestants compete to become Sweetheart's new boyfriend. After a strange set of circumstances, Hiro ends up becoming one of those contestants and ends up winning due to Sweetheart personally picking him. This is an issue since he already is off the cuff with Mari, and so he refuses her. This then promptly causes her to send Hiro and his friends into the dungeon in her castle. Once here, we find out that the whole circumstance was orchestrated by Rosa, as she was getting revenge for what happened in the junkyard. So, now we have to bust out of here. Generic bullshit time. After some puzzles, baking cakes, sorting sprout moles, teaching sprout moles to sing, and wearing masks that trick the guards, we finally make it outside. During this time, Mari even helps us at one point, which is both thematically odd and yet wholesome. Outside, we learn a password from some foolish guards and accidentally fight a horde of bears. After learning the password, we finally make it out of the castle where we end up back in the showroom for the play. Sweetheart then catches us because Aubrey decides to talk her down about being full of herself. One boss fight later, Space Boy lands a spaceship somehow underground, because that is where the showroom is, underground in Sprout Mole Village, and asks Sweetheart to marry him. Like, guy, you could do so much better. You don't need no hope. Oh well, literally nothing we could do but watch them take off in his spaceship. Sweetheart also blows up the stage for some reason, and this leaves a giant hole in it. Earlier we heard some rumors about how Firefly Forest used to have the world's most impressive library in it, and how it was buried under Sweetheart's castle. That being said, we are able to jump into the hole in the stage that will lead us to, you guess it, the Lost Library. During the descent, we lose all our friends, so for the time being, Omori's alone yet again. The Lost Library contains books of memories that could be assumed to be Sunny, back when all his friends used to hang out with each other when Mari was alive. One of these books in particular tells us about how Sunny came to have his 3 fears: heights, bugs, and water. We also get a short scene of Dark Basil in front of a piano named Omori. We'll come to that later. Lastly, we find a key attached to a note saying, "Remember, it's hidden in the toy box." We can also catch a small glimpse of Basil looking back at Omori in horror. Back to white space and back to do the not living move. Back with Sunny, we wake in the morning to hear Kel knocking at the door again. Better not keep him waiting. Kel tells us how his mom wants him to do a few errands to prepare for Hiro coming home. So, we do those errands, and we have an opportunity to do anything else before heading to the park, where the 2 friends can hear something coming from the trees. In the trees is a secret hideout with a lake that the friends used to visit in the past. We also see that Basil is being bullied by Aubrey and her friends again, so we try to save the day for a second time. This time doesn't pan out so well, since we have to fight all of Aubrey's friends and her at the same time. After inevitably being beat, Aubrey becomes enraged and orders all her friends to leave since she is dealing with her past. After everyone leaves, Aubrey then accidentally pushes Basil into the lake, and both Kel and Aubrey freeze, knowing that Basil can't swim. So, being the absolute trooper we are, Sunny dives in after Basil and promptly has to fight his fear: water. This time we are being attacked by water named Something. Just before we make it out of the water, however, we see a scene where Sunny doesn't quite make it, and then we see Mari dive in to save him. Knowing this is impossible, we are snapped to reality when we realize that it was Hiro that saved us. Turns out he arrived in town a bit early and came to the hideout and found everyone here. This is interesting though, because if we remember the book on how Sunny first got his 3 fears, he was saved then by someone from drowning. It could be reasonably assumed that Mari saved him back then. Anyway, Aubrey ends up being left behind as Hiro, Kel, and Sunny take a passed out Basil to his house. We then are invited over to Kel's place to celebrate Hiro coming home from college. As much as Hiro's mom wants to see him, Hiro ends up asking to sleep over at Sunny's place the first night he is back, since Sunny is moving soon. So that is what the trio do: head over to Sunny's house, where reality sets in for Kel and Hiro just what it means that Sunny is moving. The house being empty, Hiro asks if he can go to the back room, where we see a piano, much like the one from the Lost Library. This time, Hiro plays a song reminiscent of Omori's past, but we can also see that the piano has the name Sunny on it. Interesting, but I will talk about that later. The three settle down in Sunny's room, and before long we head back to Headspace. Things are much different this time around, as we are not greeted by our friends upon leaving Whitespace. In fact, we're not greeted by anyone, as everyone has disappeared. However, upon going to the beach, we could see a lone Mari who wonders if everyone has gone across the water. She then proceeds to help us get over the fear of water, and even follows us for comfort. While in the water, we come across a dilapidated empty lighthouse. There is also another family photo of Sunny and Mari, but it is worn down to almost destruction. Nevertheless, we move on to a maze on top of a waterfall. While going through this maze, we witness Mari slowly disembody herself, as in she starts to say things as if she were a ghost watching over Sunny and not Omori. We know this because she says Sunny's name when talking to him. At the end of a maze is the window that could be seen in the room with the Sunny piano. Mari then proceeds to disappear, leaving Omori and a whirlpool. Going down the whirlpool leads us to our next destination, Deepwell. The whirlpool leads us down a ladder and underwater. How one could breathe underwater is unknown to me, but this is a dreamland, so it is what it is. We're left alone to either wander down the endless highway or take a taxi to Last Resort. Arriving at Last Resort, we see Kel, finally. He tells us that the guy running Last Resort came to the playground and hired everyone to work for him. This includes Aubrey and Hiro. However, Kel is ready to quit his job, and we also have another important task to be doing anyways, finding Basil. So, we must bust in and get Aubrey and Hiro to quit their jobs too. After some bumbling around getting a keycard, we find Aubrey working as a secretary. She comes with us to quit her job, and we head up to the office to the head of the resort, Mr. Jossam. Kel tells Mr. Jossam he wants to quit, but he reminds everyone that they signed contracts, forcing them to work at the Last Resort indefinitely. Hiro arrives bringing Mr. Jossam some coffee, and we learn that Hiro has handily completed every job Mr. Jossam had for him and more. Well, now we know Hiro's the best at something. Anyway, at the name of Basil, Hiro tries to quit too, but Mr. Jossam enrages at the idea, and guess what? Boss time. Upon his defeat, there is no room to breathe, as he calls in Pluto and we have another boss fight against him. Just as Pluto is about to show us the power that he has, the room quite literally beginning to fall apart, Jossam calls the fight off and he agrees to let everyone go. Hooray! On our way out, the friends get the idea to put up misting posters of Basil. You'd think that would be the first idea they had, but better late than never, I suppose. Aubrey and Kel try to draw Basil, but we find out that they can't draw very well, so they scrap the idea and continue to look on their own. On their way out of Deepwell, they catch a glimpse of Sweetheart and decide to follow her down the endless highway. Doing so, they learn that Sweetheart divorced Spaceboy, and she is once again on the lookout for the perfect suitor. Following her, the group of friends eventually end up in Deeperwell. Upon crossing a long bridge leading into Deeperwell, Hiro makes a remark on how he can't remember what Basil looks like. This could explain why Kel and Aubrey couldn't draw Basil before. However, they are determined to find their friends, so they all steel themselves and continue onward. There are a couple of sentient beings here that talk in a way that are either talking to Sunny or the player. Point is, they give us some more loose clues on the story and foreshadow a choice that we must make soon. Cryptic. At the end of Deeperwell, we meet a talking whale named Humphrey. He states that he recently saw Sweetheart and swallowed her. He did this because inside of Humphrey lives 3 witches that could help Sweetheart with her problem. Only being able to remember chasing Sweetheart and nothing else on why the friends were there, Omori and company enter Humphrey in order to catch Sweetheart. Here we get the last filler generic bullshit. Yay! In order to go down an elevator inside of Humphrey, the friends need to find the slime card. So, some bomb defusing, acid surfing, and running away from a mutant cat later, we claim the darn thing. We also come across all the witches who are helping Sweetheart make a copy of herself, her perfect suitor. Well, Sweetheart doesn't like any of them, so she storms off without paying any of the witches for their work. Down the elevator, the friends come across Sweetheart running away, the witches in tow. Sweetheart piles the problem onto the friends and runs away, the witches telling Humphrey to eat her before she escapes. Sweetheart now dead, the witches look to the friends to pay 1 million clams for their work. We obviously don't have that much money, so boss fight go. Upon winning, Humphrey states that he is extremely hungry, and the friends try to escape. However, Humphrey fights them, and during said fight, he swallows them deeper and deeper into his body, where eventually, the fight causes him indigestion, and he throws up the friends. He also spits up the final pieces to the hangman puzzle, which, upon completion, shows us Basil's house, now completely desiccated and surrounded by what can be described as a red and black terror hole. We can also see the shadow figure that has been seen throughout the game enter the abyss inside the shoe house. Oh, I should also mention a scene we get for picking up the last key in the Hangman game. We are surrounded by a black and white forest, with a man that is trying to chop down a tree with a noose on it. This is symbolic as heck, and something you should keep in mind for when I talk about it later. So, obviously our next step is to return to Basil's house, but not before entering a whirlpool where Humphrey was chilling before. During our trip down the whirlpool, we get more foreshadowing of choices, and fourth wall maybe breakage. Neat. Anyways, onward to Basil's house, where the trees are dead, everyone is afraid, we jump into a hole, and Omori is all alone. We immediately are placed in a dark forest, and we must go through all three fears. Swim to the shore, cut the webs, and climb the stairs to see Mari in a coffin, and when interacting with her, we are greeted with the nice lady who first knocked on our door the night that we got over our fear of heights. We then wake up not in white space, but in black space. This time there's also more than one door too. Well, time to get cracking. Each time we go through a door, we are greeted with differing levels of horror, crazy, and bizarre. I'm not going to go through each room and what it means, because I've already gone through a lot, and there is still more to go. Just know that Sunny's mind has been anything but okay ever since his sister died. After enough rooms have been visited, a red door will appear. Open it. We come upon a frozen mountaintop with a church at the summit. Entering, we see a raised stage and Basil being suspended between two pillars while being surrounded by his black mass something. We choose to save Basil because we are the bee's pajamas. See what I did there? It was a reference to my inspiration for this video. We enter the black mass and walk upon a red room. Omori steps on the head of Basil and ascends a staircase made with red hands. At the top, he sits upon a throne made of these red hands, and we awaken back in Sunny's world in the middle of the night. We see that Hiro is no longer sleeping beside Kel, so let's go find him. We head into the piano room, where we see Ghost Mari talk about how Sunny got a violin for his birthday, and that they were working so hard to practice for a recital that they were going to do together. Hiro interrupts and talks to Sunny about Mari and what he has gone through. We then go back to sleep, and this time we don't go back to white space. Instead, we wake up in the morning. After eating breakfast, courtesy of Hiro, the trio decide to talk to Aubrey and figure out once and for all what's been going on with her. At first, Kel thought it was a bad idea, but with Hiro we might have some better luck. So we head over to Aubrey's house to find all her friends outside saying she won't come out of her house. Hiro decides to go inside anyways, and we see what kind of terrible living condition she is in. The friends find Aubrey and confront her about why she pushed Basil into the lake. She apologizes for doing what she did to Basil. Hiro notices the missing photos from the album, and Aubrey explains that the photos are all she has of Mari. Aubrey is also shocked to know Sunny still has the album because she thought she threw them away. An awkward moment ensues when Kel admits he dug through Aubrey's trash. Creepo. The friends then take some time to return all the photos to their proper place in the photo album. We also notice how each of the new photos all have Mari in them. The last photo in the album is of Sunny and Mari playing music together. There's also one photo missing from the album. The friends, now with Aubrey, decide to check up on Basil, but upon arriving at his house, they learn that he is visiting his grandma in the hospital. We got to see Basil's grandma before, but her condition has worsened, so she has to be taken into medical care. While they all wait for Basil to return, they decide to hang out since it's Sunny's last day in town. The friends go to Kel's house to hang out, and we see them having fun and catching up. The friends then remember of a treehouse in Sunny's backyard that everyone had worked so hard on making. They decide to take a visit to the treehouse, and in a moment that Aubrey and Sunny are alone, she was about to ask for them to keep in contact with each other. Sly dogs. Too bad it's split up by the other two beckoning them to the backyard. The backyard is surrounded by trees, and there's a lone tree stump that is heavily implied where Mari took her own life. The friends think about that day and what they were doing when it happened. They try to move away from the topic and continued onwards to the treehouse. We then enter the treehouse, and the place has definitely seen better days. However, all their stuff is in there, just the way they left it. There's also one more photo taped to the wall, and Sunny spots a key taped to the back with the phrase, "Remember, it's hidden in the toy box," exactly like the key we found in the lost library. The gang then completes the photo album, and everyone heads back outside. By the tree stump again, Aubrey finally tells us that Basil had gone through and crossed out Mari's faces in all the photos in the photo album. She, obviously being mad, stole the photo album and spent all her effort trying to remove the damage to the photos. Obviously it worked out since the photos are fine now, as Cal points out. Aubrey also tells the gang about how she used to hang out with Basil in school after everything had happened, but one day she made a mistake and spread a rumor about Basil. Ever since then, Basil was bullied, and why everyone was so eager to misjudge him. The friends then clear up the air and join in the group hug before going to Basil's house to confront him. We go to Basil's house, and his caretaker answers the door, saying he has locked himself in his room on the account that his grandma passed away. The friends vow to stay over at his house for the night and to be there for him since they are his friends. So everyone pitches up and sleeps on the floor or couch at Basil's house. Since Sunny falls asleep, we return to Sunny in Whitespace this time. This is due to the fact that after everything that has happened, both in Headspace and the real world, Sunny has finally dissociated himself from Omori. It is implied throughout the game that Sunny made Omori in order to take himself and his memories away from his memories with his friends, so that he can enjoy them without the pain coming back. An example of proof of this is when we are in the Lost Library and the piano has Omori's name on it instead of Sunny. There are many more points of proof for this, and upon waking up in Whitespace, we see Sunny looking at Omori in his box. Sunny then destroys the light bulb that illuminated Whitespace, and we begin the process of learning what really happened with Mari. Sunny is then brought to a place with nothing but darkness, and a light shining over the shadow figure seen throughout the game. We then fight the figure, and upon its defeat we spot a light bulb that transports us to a big tree with Basil standing out front. Upon talking to Basil, he tells us about how there's still hope and that they should believe in each other. We then enter the tree and are greeted with Sunny's mom on the couch in her house. She weeps over losing her daughter and that she's gonna try and not lose her son too. Sunny's father is not to be seen in any of these scenes, and what can be inferred is that he rejected his family after losing Mari. The scene of the man chopping down the tree with the noose on it was Sunny's father. There are also photos on the floor that, when picked up, depict Basil's perspective on the night that Mari died. After picking up each photo in each location, we are brought to a new dark location, which can be assumed as Sunny's memories the day that Mari passed. Sunny also begins to lose his fingers on his hand each time he picks up a photo, probably representing the deterioration of his mind going through these memories. After finally picking up the last photos, we can complete a new, dark photo album in which it shows Sunny pushing his sister down the stairs the night before the recital. Mari dies on impact with the bottom floor, and Sunny destroys his violin. Sunny then takes Mari to their room, where he loses himself. Basil, watching the whole thing happen, takes Mari while Sunny is too lost to stop him. Basil then ties a noose around a tree and hangs Mari from it to make it look like a suicide. Sunny is watching from the house, and the last thing he sees of his sister is her hair over her face and one eye wide open, looking at him and Basil. Sunny wakes up in the middle of the night at Basil's house, and knowing that it's bad for Basil to be alone, Sunny rushes in his room to save him. Basil then talks about how he doesn't believe Sunny could kill Mari, that something made him do it. He says how he knows Sunny is a good person, and couldn't do something like that. Basil then mentions how after all this time, Sunny has finally come back for him. Then he talks about how Sunny's moving away, and that it's so mean for him to be leaving again. Basil says it's something behind him that is making him do it, and attacks Sunny. We have a fight with Basil, and during the fight, we can see Basil's black mask something behind him. In the fight, both boys are knocked unconscious. During this time, Sunny has a vision of Basil, telling him that it's up to Sunny to stand up to the guilt, and to have faith that their friends will understand. Basil then gives us a hug and motivation by saying that they will make new memories together like the ones in the album. Using the key from the treehouse, Sunny finds his violin in the toy box in the back room of his house. Then we get a scene of Sunny finally playing the recital song together with his sister. He then relives his memories and his emotions he had with his sister when they lived together. Sunny then walks down a long road where he remembers the real memories of his friends hanging out with him and Mari. All of these things are to return Sunny to where he was before he lost himself and made Omori. The last scene we see is Sunny playing the recital song alone on a stage, and he finally confronts Omori. Sonny fights Omori and inevitably loses because as much as he wishes it wasn't true, Omori is a part of him, and he always will be. However, when choosing to give up, we can either realize this fact, and that the only way to get rid of Omori is to die, or we can accept that he is a part of us and learn not to have him live our life for us. Obviously, choosing to live is the right choice, and we wake up in the hospital in the real world. With our newfound appreciation for monocles, we walk to Basil's room where we see all of our friends standing around a sleeping Basil. Sonny then proceeds to tell his friends what really happened the night of Mari's death. And that's it. Roll credits. If you watered the flowers throughout the game, we could see a scene of Basil waking up in the hospital and trading a smile with Sonny. Alright, we did it. That's it. That's the good ending. I left out a few of the pieces of the story, like the other paths and endings, why everyone drifted apart after Mari died, and what everything in Headspace means and represents, but this is an abridged video, not an explained one. Okay, personal opinion time. Omori is a great game, done very well. The story is done a very good job of leading you in one direction, only to, at the very end, sort of be like, oh, what you thought about this is going on is actually not. There's some more to it than that, and here's a twisty thing at the end, and it's just done very well. My words could never do it justice. The music is very good. All the boss themes are very catchy, very pleasant to listen to themes, and this is one of the very few games in which I actually bought the soundtrack for. The game's art is the hand-drawn aesthetic, does very well with upplaying the story and setting a mood for each area and what we can expect out of the game. And then the gameplay itself, not done like amazing. It's RPG, so it doesn't do anything new. It still has the rock, paper, scissors combat to it, but it's done in a unique way, using emotions instead of, swords, bows, and magic. I think it's done well in that aspect on the uniqueness, but otherwise the gameplay is fairly average, all things considered. One thing I didn't like very much is how at the beginning of the game, when you're taken through the flower fields, all the characters' traits are explained to you right then and there, and what that does is it robs the player from being able to experience those character traits from those characters in future scenes in which you exercise that from them. Like later on when Hiro is talking to Mr. Jossum, if we got to be able to see Hiro being a hard worker, that would have been much more of a payoff if we weren't just told right out of the gate that he's a hard worker. And then another thing I didn't like too well was how little impact all of these side quests had on the game. The side quest where you get a butt certificate for Aubrey for getting a tetherball, and that side quest is done well, because later on Kel ends up planting the butt certificate in Otherworld, and at least it may have been a joke, but at least something came out of the quest, whereas most of all of the other quests in the game don't really do anything to impact the story in any way. But the game does do a good job at making the world feel lived in. Rather than just having stationary NPCs you go and talk to once, they move throughout the game. Like Pessy in Otherworld, you meet him in Otherworld, and then later on when you revisit Headspace in the future, he moves to Sproutmole Village, and then you do a side quest for him. I think that does very well at making the world feel lived in, and that there's things that are changing, so that's done well. Alright, so that's everything I wanted to say about the game. I want you to know this is the first ever video of me doing it scripted at all. If you guys like it, I could do more. I have a couple ideas on similar videos I could make in the future. So, just let me know. I could keep doing it. I want you to know also, this project took a lot longer than I thought it would, and it didn't help that partway through the project, a power outage happened that wiped all my progress, because of course it did. It's the first time I had a power outage in like 2 years, and of course it has to be in the middle of me working on the project, and it corrupted the file, and I don't use Adobe, so I don't have a cloud saving. And so the whole thing went kaput, so there's that. That's why the video's out later than it should be. Gosh. Anyways, that's all that I wanted to say about the game. I'm gonna go get some food because I am quite hungry. Yeah, that's it. Outro time. Kick it.